What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about music in movies. And the reason I'm going to talk about music in movies is I was at the theater recently and I saw the trailer for the new Amy Winehouse biopic, which looks absolutely horrible, honestly. A while ago, I watched the Amy documentary that A24 put out, which was absolutely exceptional. Just one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, honestly. And watching this movie, it looks like a really poor interpretation of Amy Winehouse, and I'm not really looking forward to it. And a while ago, I released a video giving you guys some of my favorite biopics, and so I was like, I already covered that topic, but I've never really just talked about music in movies, and music is such a big part of my life. I love music, it is so important to me, and I love when a filmmaker can incorporate music into a movie and make it a central focal point of the film. And so I thought today it would be fun to talk about some of my favorite movies that music is a central focus of rather than just the biopics. So I'm really excited to talk about some of my favorite movies that include music as a central focal point for you today. So first up, I want to talk about the film Sound of Metal. This movie is absolutely incredible, with one of the best performances I've seen in a long time from Riz Ahmed. This is about a young man who is touring with his girlfriend, played by Olivia Cook. They are both musicians who play in kind of like an alternative experimental band, and he is the drummer, and he absolutely adores music, and he slowly starts to lose his hearing, and he goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells him, if you do not stop playing shows, you are going to go completely deaf. And he is just not willing to accept that. He is not willing to come to terms with the idea he can't play music anymore. And so he continues to go on tour until it gets so bad he can't ignore it anymore. And so he decides with his girlfriend to stop touring and go to this community where deaf people live, where they are coming together to kind of learn how to live life while being deaf. And the entire movie is him coming to terms with that. Can he accept the fact that he may never be able to hear again, and what it's like for someone who has such a deep and immense love for music to possibly never be able to hear music again. And I think that's what really makes the movie so intensely emotional, is for someone like myself who loves movies and music, being able to hear is such an important part of that experience. And thinking about what would happen if that was taken away from you when it's such a central part of your life. And I think Riz Ahmed does a lot with the material and gives so much to the performance, and really brings that subject matter to life in a way that is emotionally moving. This movie makes me cry multiple times every time I revisit it. It's beautifully shot, and it also has some of the best sound design I've ever seen in a film. Sound is so important to the way this movie operates. It really, without the incredible sound design, the experience would be nowhere near the same. And it is 100% one of my favorite movies ever that has music as a central focal point. Next is going to be the Coen brothers film Inside Llewyn Davis. I absolutely adore this movie. Oscar Isaac plays a struggling folk musician who can't seem to get his career on track, no matter who in that industry gets successful, and how talented he is as a musician. He can't seem to get a record deal going. He can't seem to sell his music, and it's just about him struggling and the things in his life along the way that cause him additional problems. And it's kind of centralized around those artists who can be incredibly talented but never necessarily reach that peak level of success that so many other musicians have. The soundtrack to this movie is beautiful. Some of my favorite music ever made. Every time I listen to it, it just moves me so much. It's such a beautiful film. And what I love so much about it is it kind of shows the versatility of the Coen brothers as directors. I feel like throughout their career, they've covered so many different genres and styles. And this movie has its comedic moments, but it's so beautiful and dramatic and thoughtful in a way that not all of their movies are. Like there's movies that they have that are really just kind of overblown comedies or silly ridiculous films, and this and like No Country for Old Men and some of their more like straightforward, really dramatic pieces always move me a lot. And there's so much attention to detail in every element of this movie. It's another one of my favorite films that centers around music. Up next is the film Once from director John Carney. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the group The the Swell Season. This is a movie about the two members of the Swell Season. I've been following Glenn Hansard's music career for quite some time, so with this movie, when this movie was released, I was super excited to watch it, and it's absolutely beautiful. It incorporates a lot of the Swell Season's music, and the way that the music is so naturally incorporated with the story of these two characters meeting and forming this relationship. I think whenever you can, incorporate an artist's music into a film where it so seamlessly runs side by side with the narrative, it's incredibly impressive. It's a rough around the edges indie movie that really succeeds in having a whole lot of heart. I remember when I first watched this movie when it was released, I want to say like 2006, 2007, sometime when I was in late high school. I watched this movie like 60 times back to back to back to back and just grew to love it more every time I watched it. Glenn Hansard just has such a unique vocal presence, unlike really any male musician I've ever heard. Just like the way he carries his voice and how much more emotionality it adds into his already really intense lyrics. And yeah, it's just a really wonderful movie that I recommend to virtually everyone. Super easy to watch, really easy to get invested in, and it's one that I really want to revisit because it's been several years since I've seen it. Up next, and I had to incorporate a horror movie, is the film Deathgasm. I absolutely adore this movie. Picture Evil Dead with metal music. It's about a young kid who both of his parents died, and he is forced to go live with his super conservative aunt and uncle, and he is a metalhead. He wears all black, he listens to nothing but death metal music, and he manages to find someone at school who also loves metal music, and the two of them become really close friends, and they go hunt down this musician who they find that they really love that is living in their area. And when they get to his house, it's abandoned and vacant, and they find this piece of sheet music, and they're forming a metal band with some other kids at the school, and they play the sheet music, and they find out that the sheet music has unleashed demons in their community, and they now have to fight off all of these demons in their town. And it's very Evil Dead-esque, over the top, really bloody, and it has an incredible soundtrack of a various assortment of metal music that just is perfectly and seamlessly incorporated into the film. I think it does a really great job at kind of approaching a lot of stereotypes surrounding people who listen to metal music and about metal music as a genre. So many people think that metal is just boiled down to people screaming, but there's such like a beautiful sense of community in metal music, and like finding people who are struggling and who may feel isolated and alone, and kind of bringing those people together through a very aggressive and intense style of music. And I think complementing that with a very aggressive and violent horror movie was really the way to approach it. And it's a movie that consistently leaves a smile on my face. I've seen this movie more times than I can count, and if you've never seen it before, highly recommend checking it out. Up next is going to be a Disney film, and that is the animated movie Fantasia. I adore Fantasia. Disney, early on in their career, this is kind of like avant-garde for Disney. There's really not a lot of dialogue in this movie, if any, if I remember correctly. It's all music associated, and each segment of the film is paralleled to some story or some art form that accompanies the music so beautifully. And when I was very, very young, as a little kid, I was completely and totally obsessed with orchestral music, and I still am now to this day. I love classical music. I love big string orchestras, to the point where my grandfather, when I was very young, like built me a conductor's bench when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I used to like conduct to this movie. That's how much I absolutely adored Fantasia. And throughout the years, my love for it has grown, because I just think that it really kind of showcases Disney at a peak of their creativity, where they're like, we're gonna make this movie for kids that is like solely focused around the music, and that completely and totally like shifts what a narrative can be for a children's film. And I love that about Fantasia. And they ended up making Fantasia 2000, which I don't think is as good, but it's still very entertaining. And this is a movie that, like, if you haven't seen it, pinnacle in Disney's career and a must watch. And then last up, I want to mention Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark. This is much more musical theater than just straight up music, but I adore this movie. It is dark and depressing, but it's also incredibly beautiful. Bjork gives one of my favorite performances of all time in this film. It is about a mother and a son, who the son is developing this degenerative disease where he will no longer be able to see, and his mother is also going through that, and she's working this job where she has to use heavy machinery, and she kind of puts her body on the line every single day to make enough money for her son to live, and also to try to get him this surgery that will repair his eyesight. And she is obsessed with musicals. It's all she ever thinks about, and so she breaks out into musical numbers in this movie, and it is gut-wrenching, it's heartbreaking, it is a beautiful expression of the lengths that a mother will go to take care of her child. And it's a movie that I never stop thinking about. I know Lars von Trier is one of those people that is like has been problematic through the years. He's not necessarily like the best human being, but for some reason he creates some of the most incredible art that's ever been created, and this is no exception. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a movie I recommend to virtually everyone, and if you've never seen it before, please watch it. It will 100% move you. So those are just some of my favorite movies that music is incorporated in. What are some of yours? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear some of your favorites so I could add some of them into my list. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.